Welcome to this support video for GCSE Art, Craft and Design. I'm going to give you a project walkthrough around a project called Old and New. In that walkthrough, the intention will be to give you an insight into a project's journey from start through to middle and end, and see how a student realises their intentions, but it would also show how the student as artist sort of researched, made contextual links, has also experimented with materials, techniques and processes, has recorded observations, has generated ideas, and then has developed the strongest of ideas towards a final conclusion or a final piece. Each of those hitting the four assessment strands. One, sort of artist research as we think of it in simple terms. AO2, experimentation with media techniques and processes, developing ideas. AO3, sort of recording observations, and also, we record observations through annotation as well as drawing and photography. And AO4, realising intention, sort of personal response, and it's also the culmination of the whole journey. Okay. So if we look at this first image, I'm going to do it in quite a linear format. If we look at this first image from the student here, we've got recorded observations, so kicking off the project, exploring the title of Old and New. So we've got some photographs of an old bike and a new bike, so a mountain bike and an old sort of, butcher's shop classic bike, so the whole old and new. It was an interested item for the student. A set of really interesting observational photographs, cropped angles, zoomed in, different viewpoints. So obviously this would be more appropriate than trying to record these through drawing. You can see here that we have got, here we go, all these are the contact sheets. So this is the evidence of all of the photographs the student has taken, which is always good to present, irrespective of the strength of the photograph, as it shows evidence of the undertaking. You can see that they've been circled, so that's the student showing their intentions possibly to enlarge these. As you can see, if we look at some of the images, just wait for this, it's just a bit of a lag. If you look at this one, for instance, here, you can see that that was selected by the student to enlarge and present as a stronger photograph. Yeah, so you can see their intention. So that little circle is in some ways annotated and recording ideas. Strong set of photographs, nicely presented. Okay, next slide. So we've got some more cropped in, zoomed in, different angles, focusing on different textures, different viewpoints, almost abstracting. So it's just a bit more recording observations again. So this is from the sort of older bike. And another set of photographs. Unusual angles can sometimes make something realistic look quite abstract. I really like this handlebar one, looking up from the floor to the sky, how they're cropped in, just picking out certain typography and some of the key elements from within the bikes. Then they've also chose to select an experiment, turning some of the photographs into black and white to maybe show some of the age, but also drawing off the photographs as well. So we've got some nice recording and experimenting with different materials such as charcoals and chalks on brown paper, different materials, and down at the bottom here, just that little extension there in chalk and charcoal on black paper. So we're already hitting sort of elements of AO2 as well. And then the candidate has decided to, because of the technical nature perhaps, extend some of these drawings with just simple drawing line work, showing the technical nature and demonstrating skill, and that's appropriate to the intention, so it fits. You wouldn't expect this maybe to be done in something like oil pastels perhaps, because of the technical nature of the item, so it sort of feels right and it's showing a lot of skill as well. And then again, demonstrating skill and that technical nature and appropriate use of material. Got a really nice sort of plan drawing there of white pencil crayon on black paper. Got some more zoomed in photographs. These have been saturated, probably adjusted, and I can see down here a reference to the photographer Martin Parr, who has this candid nature of photography with also saturated colours, and I think a reference has been made to that nature and type of photography in his annotation. So looking at one of the strong photographs, this up view of the handlebar end, he has then experimented again with confidence and produced a very accurate, very sharp rendering using positive and negative space. So the black is the nothing, the paper, and stenciled the handlebar using pastels, which I think is really effective and works again as an appropriate material. And another rendering again, similar sort of intentions, negative and positive space, really clean, sharp rendering of the outline of the old shop bike. And we've got some really nice skills demonstrated with drawing, so fits for AO2, AO1, really recording very strong drawings of some of the key elements of the bike. And then we move into one of the first chosen artists, so we've got Leonardo da Vinci, and you can see a really strong rendering by the student there of a face and some appropriate annotation. Yeah. And then we've got a study, a couple of studies there by the artist that he's picked, which are appropriate to the type of work that the student is looking to focus on, which is about detail and the sort of planned nature of a Vitruvian man here. And you can see sort of rendering of Vitruvian man there. So it's been aged a little bit on some brown paper. So again, we get a little bit of AO1 links to artists' work. I think this is the student himself, a younger photograph of the student himself, so that links. So instead of doing a copy, yeah, he's done himself in the similar style. And then we've got his sort of his rendering of Vitruvian man. Okay. And then he's experimented with materials. So we've got some mono printing. So he's had a go at the skull here on brown paper with mono printing. So quite nice mounting. It all fits rather nicely. And then one of Da Vinci's inventions, the helicopter. And we've got some basic biographical information here. And you know, it's quite succinct, there's not pages of it, and it's quite in tune to picking out the elements that the student has wanted to identify and capture. And in the rendering, it's all about this precise detail. Then the student introduces a second artist, so this is Patrick Caulfield. Very, very different, very contrasting, very 2D, very flat, very colourful, everyday objects, very simplified. We've got a little bit of basic biographical and some of the students' renderings here in appropriate materials. And then the student has had a go at trying to screen print. Yeah, very basic stencil screen. And in the annotation, he's identified the process and some of the issues that the student encountered. So there's a little bit of reflection there, a little bit of process annotation. And then we've got a couple more renderings of simple objects with the student highlighting some of the key characteristics of the artist's work and also the I think sort of statements where the student is identifying some opinion about the artist's work and maybe how their work could link to that of the artist. And then moving on to looking at ideas, what this individual could do, exploring just those two artists. Now, in many of our projects, obviously we look at multiple artists to give you maximum opportunity to maybe synthesize elements of artists' work in addition to maybe ones that you find as part of the generating ideas process, which may lead you further into other areas. So you're getting a really good broad understanding. So the more artist contexts that you have in a project, the greater opportunity you will have to maybe develop your own ideas and develop a greater understanding of the project brief itself. So this is just simply two artists. So the student has identified in their annotation, so they've looked at key elements of the artist's work, they've tried to pick out what identifies that artist, and then the student has started to develop an understanding of the world through experience, through looking at the artist's work, talking about how Caulfield uses flat images, large areas, simplified objects, and how Da Vinci is about studying detail, very plan-like approach, very meticulous, and I can see the student's thoughts in these initial ideas here, so what he could do with taking elements of the artist's work. And I can see clearly through the annotation and the small diagrams that the student is considering taking simple everyday objects which we assume contain either nothing or something simple inside, but maybe possibly having a false truth within them as such. Okay. So then the student has explored that concept through initial ideas and chose an appropriate route to explore those ideas. So this could have been photographic, could have been collage, could have been purely annotation, could be drawing or painting. It's whatever means you think is the most appropriate to show your initial thoughts. So for this student, they've got a good skill set and has decided that their initial ideas can be clearly illustrated through some small, nicely rendered thumbnails. So you can see they are, unfortunately, all of a similar theme, but they are all independent ideas. So what I would have liked to have seen is probably a greater range of concepts, as these all hook around the one concept as such. Okay, so in some ways this is actually a form of development rather than initial ideas. However, you can see how you can present ideas really clearly and succinctly. So what he's doing here is clearly looking through the potential of different objects and what could be inside them as the sort of almost like magic element of it's not what you expect. So we've got 10 ideas here. However, it is around the single concept. I think it misses the breadth of maybe having 10 individual ideas, very standalone. That would give us then the choice to develop the strongest one. Now from here, yes, you could say you could develop the strongest shape or object. However, the concept is just the same here. So I think it's lacking in that element to say that actually it needs more breadth. Okay, but they are really nicely rendered ideas, so hopefully this helps explain that situation. So from the development point of view, so this whole idea of narrowing down, you can see here that we've got this sort of sphere as being the one that has decided to go forward. So if we just go back through the slides, a bit of a lag there, just move through. You can see the sphere, which was in theory idea number 3, is the one that has caught the student's attention, maybe in discussion with the teacher. as the one that will be developed. Now all of the others, the brick, the cube, the cone, the cereal box, the pyramid, the cardboard box, the block of wood, the can, the light bulb, at this point are all going to be parked. So the student has a strong decision for that one concept. Now for development, it may well be that there are parts of elements of ideas that you want to explore further while tapering towards development, towards a final piece. However, it may well you have very clearly one standout idea that is the one that you want to develop. Okay, so for this particular candidate, the one idea he wanted to develop was the concept around the sphere. So what is development? Development is tapering down your initial thoughts to the point of that you explore them, looking at all the different options, all the different questions you would have to answer as you aim to construct a successful final piece. And what I mean by that is a final piece could be a final drawing, a final painting, a final piece of textiles, mixed media, prints, set of photographs, digital artwork, or sculpture, or a combination of those. It could be one final piece, it could be a series. However, you don't have all of the information at the point of initial ideas to make that judgment where you would be able to go in this particular student's instance from number 3, the sphere, to I am going to make a successful final piece. It's going to be this big, this coloured, this material, etc., etc. You don't have that information at the point of initial ideas, hence the need for the development phase. So you've taken your idea, so as I can see on here, so if we just highlight it again, so idea 3 is the idea that the student has decided to show that they are taking forward into the development process, and now it is a case of looking at that one idea and saying, right, what do I need to do to refine it, to improve it, and to make sure that all the materials I'm going to use and the ultimate putting together of that idea is going to be successful and not left anything to chance, so I don't end up halfway through the making of the final piece and realise that something doesn't work, it's not the right size, it's not the right materials, it doesn't fit, it's not appropriate. Okay, so that is where you evidence your thinking process. Okay, so he's obviously chosen the sphere. So he's looking at different elements of development. Now these will be different for everybody depending on if it's a coloured piece, a black and white piece, a 2D piece or a 3D piece, if it's digital or manual. Okay, so these are very, very distinctly different to whatever piece that you look to develop. So you can see on this sheet the student has started to think about what is going to be inside this sphere. What could it be? So he's talking about watch parts and LED lights and nuts and bolts and resistors and all this sort of thing. He's put some annotation at the little top part of the screen here, and he said that my idea is to make some water clear cast in resin spheres, yet containing complicated, intricate things which have yet to develop. So he's basically saying, yeah, it's going to have some things in it, this sphere. It's going to be a cast object. I don't know what's going to be in it yet, but here's my thoughts on this page. It's what I could do. He's also done some small monoprints on this page to show you different potential ways he could do it. He's then talking about the exterior on these, and there's a whole series of different pieces of paper exploring the exterior. And then in this one, this one is almost like a plan view. So what you could do with, he's decided to obviously to do 3 spheres and to present them. He's showing this in different formats, so it could sit on a base, with a small plaque, a little bit like a Victorian sort of museum piece. They could be on some sort of columns, or they could be in some sort of glass case. he's obviously made the decision in his annotation about what's going to go in them, how they're going to now, he's looking at different ways how they could be presented. And then after all of that series, he would then draw out and illustrate what the final idea would be. It's like a final plan. So if you were a builder and an architect gave you a plan for a house, it would have every intricate decision already made. So the builder doesn't build that house and get halfway up and go, that doesn't look right. Nothing is left to chance, and that's what development is. So I can see really clearly here a really nice rendering. So I know it's going to be 3 spheres. It's going to be on a base like that with a plaque. He's going to have different things within the casting. One of them's going to have an outer baseball. One of them's going to be a tennis ball. He's explained it in a slight evaluation. So I said the final piece represents the combination of the 2 artists, Patrick Caulfield, Leonardo da Vinci. The simplicity of the sphere shape coming from Patrick Caulfield, so the simplicity of everyday objects, and the complexity and the intricacy of the insides representing Leonardo da Vinci. All of this shown in my initial ideas and development building up to this final piece. And then what unfortunately I haven't got to show you is the final actual sculpture that was made as well, so that would come at the end of it. But at no point in this project you can see it fits really nicely, it all comes together really, really well. There's some nice links in there, there's some missed opportunities, but there's some really nice links in there explaining and showing how the student has synthesized 2 artists, they've generated some initial ideas, they've chosen an idea to develop, and they've looked into the different aspects that they would need to consider for development. And that development process, as I said, is independent to every student piece of work. So you may end up having to develop composition, form elements such as line, tone, texture, shape, pattern, colour, form, depending on what your idea is, what your artists are that you're making links to, what materials you end up exploring. But all of it needs to be experimented with and developed, and showing all the decisions you made at every process, what worked, what didn't, what you did then, what you decided to do, how it could look when you make it ultimately. So hopefully that was helpful for you.